What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and today we're taking a first look at the Reebok Nano 13s. All right, so if you're watching this video, it's probably already Friday, January 20th or beyond that date, and the Reebok Nano 13s in the hype colorways have already come out. And you want to know what's different between the Nano 13 and the previous Nanos. So I've had this shoe for about the last week and a half now, a week and a few days. They actually came in when I went to Wadapalooza, so I didn't get to bring them with me to the event and wear them around or do any testing or anything over the last weekend. But over this week, I have been using these shoes. I haven't been testing them a ton, honestly, because there was an embargo up until Friday, January 20th. So I couldn't talk about them, really couldn't show them off or do anything with them. But I did get in some lifts, did get in some quick workouts, and I think I have some pretty solid first impressions on the Nano 13. So, Nano 13, 13th iteration of the Nano. When I first started CrossFit in 2012, the Nano 2 had just come out. So this shoe makes me feel real old. But I will say that this Nano feels like we're back on track with the previous versions of Nanos. This actually, to me, feels like a CrossFit shoe, whereas the last two Nanos, they felt like training shoes, but not necessarily CrossFit shoes. The Nano 12 was pretty good. The Nano 11, and I will never mince my words with this, the Nano 11 to me is like one of the worst training shoes of all time, or one of the worst CrossFit shoes of all time. And I'm glad to say that the Nano 13 feels like we're back on track. So today, first impressions, I'm not really gonna go in depth on performance or anything. I'm just gonna kind of walk you around the Nano 13, give you a little quick breakdown on some of the materials that they've used on the upper, what they feel like, sizing and everything, because I know people are gonna be shopping for this when it comes out or after it came out, which is January 20th. So without further ado, let's just talk about the construction. So I don't know all the names of the materials that they've used. I know a few different things. This is the 13th model, so it's the odd number, and they should be using different tooling, though there are some kind of like similarities between this and the Nano 12. So like silhouette-wise, they're kind of similar, but they don't feel the same. So we have more of a really thick mesh woven material pretty much all throughout the vamp. It's pretty heavy duty, definitely not as flexible as the Flex Weave knit, but it feels pretty comfortable, pretty breathable, but definitely flexible enough. I think the foot containment is better on the shoe than the Flex Weave knit because it is just a little bit more taut. And then the Vector logo is made out of some overlays. There is a thicker overlay right here, this black piece right here, and then the back part is just kind of, just a normal overlay on top of a more heavy duty ankle collar. So this is another woven material throughout the ankle collar, and it is fairly sturdy. The ankle collar itself has some decent cushioning. I never noticed any heel slip in the last week of wear, so that's pretty good. Plus, I don't really get any kind of heel rub at the back of this shoe, so I really like that about it. So coming around the back of the shoe, once again, we have the TPU heel clip, but in addition to the TPU heel clip, we also have something new this year that they've brought to the Nano 13, and apparently they've been working on it for a long time, and it's called the LAR chassis. And that stands for the lift and run chassis. And you can kind of see it. It's right here. It's this zigzag Zorro kind of Z here that's in blue. And it's basically this plate that goes from like the metatarsals all the way through the midpoint of the shoe. And then it actually drops down at the very back of the shoe here into the heel. So from my understanding is it's basically in the inside part, it's kind of like a dome shape that flattens out when you do your lifting movements, when you put pressure on it. So it stabilizes the shoe, but otherwise it just stays a dome and it stays flexible and comfortable so that you can do your plyometrics and running movements. The heel itself has that carrier foam, and then it's got a very flat contact to the actual outsole profile. And I really like that about these in comparison to the last two models, where I felt like they were a little bit more geared towards like running, plyometric movements, body weight movements and stuff like that. These feel like they are made for lifting, and I really like that about them. The outsole is full length rubber from heel to toe. It's a pretty dense feeling rubber. I think that it should be durable, and they did change the way that the Rope Pro is connected to the shoe. So in the Nano 12s, the Rope Pro went down to a point, and that's the point that split off of the shoe. On the Nano 13s, there are no brakes at the Rope Pro, and then it rises up so that you do have a little bit more covering the medial and the lateral sides. So it's kind of like an extended sidewall, I guess. So you should not, at least right now, I'm gonna say that you should not run into the same rope climb woes on the Nano 13 as you did on the Nano 12s. This still does use float ride foam. That is confirmed. There's a carrier foam on the outside, and then it should have full length float ride in the inside. But I will have to check on that because I'm not sure if it's full length. It might be like a drop in at the front and then a drop in at the heel, but it definitely has float ride in this shoe. One thing that I noticed with the way that the lacing system works is it's mainly just a basic lacing system throughout the whole thing, and then it's got this TPU piece at the very front, and I think that's to give the shoe a little bit more structure towards the metatarsals, give you a little bit more foot containment in that area. The tongue, nothing really special to write home about. It is not gusseted. Why would they do that again? But it is not gusseted on the sides. It seems to want to stay in place better than the last model. The laces are, I mean, they feel like the same as last models, which are fine because they stay tight. They're a little flimsy and a little cheap feeling, but they do stay tight, so I can't really complain about that. The insole, anatomical and nicely shaped. It's very comfortable. It's pretty dense, and it feels to me like the same as last year's. Let me pull out last year's, and I think it's got to be. I mean, it's got to be the same. Yeah, that's the same one, which is not a bad thing. I thought that insole did just fine. I had no problems with it. Breathes well, comfortable enough. No issues there. The drop on these shoes is still a 7mm drop. And I know a lot of people out there are going to hate that, but I can assure you these do not feel like a 7mm drop shoe. They feel very flat. Like I said before, the contact area with the ground feels very wide and just planted on the ground when you have these shoes on. They do definitely run on the stable side. One thing that I noticed immediately with these shoes is that they were much heavier than the Nano 12. So I weighed the Nano 13s in at 13.6 ounces for a men's size 10. A little heftier, now a lot heavier than the Nano X2 and X1, but a little bit lighter than the Nano 10 and a little bit heavier than the Nano 9. So still on the heavy side for Nano shoes in general. Okay, so when it comes to sizing your Nano 13s, I'm gonna recommend that you go with your normal Reebok size. These do run slightly on the bigger and wider side. There's plenty of toe box space in these shoes. I feel like if anything, they really nailed it there with the toe box space. I thought the toe box was pretty big on the Nano 12 as well. I think that you should get these true to size. Now, I have been sizing my Nikes, my tiers, my strike movements up, and I just tried Rads in 10.5. And I got these in my normal size 10. They fit me very similar to a Nike 10.5 or tier 10.5. We'll go with and strike movement 10.5 as well. So get your normal Reebok size. Reebok tends to run a little bit bigger, and I think you should be okay with these. So if you're, recap that, if you had a Nike shoe, you're gonna go down half a size. If you had a Tier shoe, you're gonna go down half a size, and so on. But I feel like these run pretty much in line with all of the other Reebok shoes that have come out in the last 3 years. The Nano 10 was probably the smallest one. So if you're coming from Nano 10s, then you're probably gonna wanna go down half a size. Size these like Nano 9s. I think, okay, Nano 9s. I think everybody had Nano 9s. So size these like Nano 9s. They do run on the wider side. Okay, so once again, I'm not really gonna talk about performance of a shoe, but I will say a few things so far that I've noticed with the Nano 13. First one is that they are not as flexible as the Nano 12 or Nano 11. So coming off of those shoes, you're gonna really notice that these are not flexible. Like, it might feel like these are like a little bit on the stiff side, and for good reason. They are definitely more stiffer than the last two iterations. But if you're coming off like something like the Rad or the Metcon 7, I wanna say, these will feel pretty similar in how the stiffness is. Definitely have a wider contact area than something like Strike Movement or Tier or Rad even more so than probably Metcon. I'd say the heel feels pretty similar to Metcon's 7 and 8, but the forefoot and just contact patch on these is very direct on the ground. They feel very flat. You do get a slight mechanical advantage because they do have a 7mm drop, and it does almost have this like oldie shoe feel to it. The very toe feels like too little foam, but it's at the very point of the shoe, and I don't really think that's gonna make a difference when you lift. Maybe on the far extremes, if you're trying to save a lift from going forward all the way, that might kind of affect that lift, but otherwise I feel like the drop on these shoes is pretty gradual. You have very planted feel in these shoes, and to me they feel flexible enough for, I want to say, most of the stuff that you're going to do. I'm not going to say that these are going to be the best running shoe or best running Nano or best running trainer out there. They already do not feel like it to me. But if you're used to running and like, I want to say Nano 10s and Nano 9s, these probably are not going to be too far off, other than the fact that they might be a little bit more stiff than the Nano 9. Otherwise, lifts have been really good in these shoes. Really good. And that's the thing that I've been missing for the last 2 years in Nanos. Like, I could get my lifts in with the Nano X1 Fronings, Nano X2s, but they wouldn't be my preferred training shoe to lift in. They were just usable for me. I could adapt to it, I could use it, but they would not ever be my first choice for lifts. These, I feel like I could take these right now, go hit a 1-rep max snatch, go hit a 1-rep max squat. Probably wouldn't be my favorite deadlift shoe because they still are a little bit taller. I did some snatches, rock solid, not super duper heavy. Did some cleans in these, also, once again, rock solid. Did a Metcon in nothing too crazy, like wall ball, some snatches, some barbell cycling, and some bike, and you know, lo and behold, obviously they're going to be stable for those movements. They did feel comfortable enough on my feet. My feet didn't get torn up from doing all that repetitive motion. And so, so far, so good. When it comes down to like review time frame, I want to say maybe 3 weeks, 2 weeks from now. 2 weeks on the short side. If I can get everything that I want to do in these done in the next 2 weeks, that's probably going to be the time frame. Otherwise, probably about 3 weeks. The global launch is, I believe, February 10th is the global launch for these shoes. That's when everybody gets it. All the colorways come out. The Reebok Unlocked launch is February 3rd. So that's when Reebok Unlocked members get to buy these shoes, which is pretty much anybody that has a Reebok account. is a Reebok Unlocked member. So everybody's gonna have access to these, at least in the United States. And then the Hype Pack, 2 different colorways. There's a white version, there is this black version. Come out today. This video should be up on Friday, January 20th. These retail for $150, and I believe the normal Nano 13s are gonna retail for $140. These ones though, 150 bucks. Gotta pay a little bit more if you want them early. 2 different colorways, paying homage to Reebok classic shoes. I don't know what Reebok classic shoe, but it is a pretty sweet colorway. I actually really like this one. This is dope. And I have too many white shoes, so I'm glad that they sent me this one. But anyways, stay tuned for the full-on performance review of the Reebok Nano 13s. If you guys want to see me in action working out in these, make sure you follow me on Instagram at as many reviews as possible on Instagram, and stay tuned on my channel. Subscribe, hit that like button, turn on the notifications, and I will catch you guys in the next video.